Good afternoon, everyone. What will schools post-pandemic look like? Has the pandemic pushed us in the future? Are schools future ready? If any of these questions have made it in your thoughts in the past one and a half month, please stay tuned in because the next 30 minutes will be packed with questions to our expert panel who will help us paint a mental picture of what the schools will look like post-pandemic. I am Pooja Kedia from SchoolWiser, and today I am joined by Mrs. Riti Malhotra. Mrs. Malhotra comes with a rich experience of 3 decades, which includes schools like Ryan International Delhi, Scottish High Gurgaon, and Mrs. Malhotra is currently the Director Principal at Manav Rachna International School, Gurgaon. We are also joined by Mrs. Ritu Jhava. Mrs. Jhava comes with an experience of almost 2 decades and has worked with schools such as DPS RK Puram and KR Mangalam, both in Delhi. Mrs. Jhava is currently heading the primary wing at Lotus Valley International School, Gurgaon. We may also be joined by Dr. Vora. Dr. Amrita Vora is basically the head educationist at GEMS India. She is currently taken on the role of quality and basically the head of professional development, quality and assurance at GEMS India, and serving as the director of education at GEMS India and is the executive principal for GEMS International Schools, Gurgaon. Let's just kick off the discussion. And if I could start with you, Mrs. Java. I have, one of the questions that a lot of parents have already started talking about is to do with, have our kids actually started attending schools of the future? So in your opinion, as an educationist, what would these schools look like? And if you could help our parents break this down and clearly identify differentiators of what schools look like, let's say last year, vis-a-vis what schools look like today, or what you think schools will look like in another maybe 6-7 months, a year post-pandemic.
Okay, so a very good evening, Pooja, and a very good evening, Mrs. Malhotra. Thank you so much for inviting me and to have a very important, pertinent discussion. And we are joined by Dr. Vora also now. A very good evening, Dr. Vora. So maybe, Pooja, if you may want to repeat the question so that there's a continuity of her also as in
Sure.
Yes.
Sure. Hi, welcome. We've just started off, and I've just, asked Mrs. Java to throw some light on the fact that we get a lot of parents who talk about, are we kind of in the future of education, and is this what education will look like in the future? So I'm trying to understand, your perspective, Mr. Java, on what the schools in the future would look like, and if you could identify key differentiators of what schools look like, let's say last year, vis-a-vis what they look like today, or what you think they will look like next year, and help our parents identify how the two scenarios will be different.
Thank you, Pooja. So am I audible enough so I don't have to hold the mic close to my, okay. So first of all, I think for us to be asking this question in itself is a preparation. When we think about the fact that were we ready for this kind of a situation 20 years back, were we still ready for a situation like this that we've all faced? Having said that, I think the human species are made to kind of fight against all those obstacles, and the teacher fraternity or the education industry is so strong that it actually decides of how to figure out all those challenges that you can. And today I would say that we are much ready and much prepared, considering that we had no such preparation about the virtual platform, and we as teachers were much closer to the students because we preferred to be physically connected, and all our teaching learning was based around a situation which was going to school, preparing your lessons, giving out your lessons, connecting with students, and coming back. Having said that, the present scenario prepares us better for future because we have actually walked in as teachers into an education system where we are able to prepare and create plans much ready for future. And so are the parents. So somewhere we've been able to strike that balance with each other, whether it is the teachers to the students or the school to the teachers or the teachers to the parents. So, that triangle has been so beautifully connected because we know that there is no other way but to do it. And I would say that education industry has been the strongest warrior. We all have been able to fight it much better than any other business around. And we don't even think that any of us had the time to relax. Was there a time to take a breather and say, okay, we will just think about it and then plan? I think without even getting the time to plan, we were much ready to plan. And while we
Right.
were ready to plan, even now, knowing that we weren't prepared for such a situation, we've still managed it. And why would we not be able to do that 20 years from now, or 5 years from now, or post COVID? Because when we were put into a situation like this, which is the present situation, we were much ready to face it. So I would say that
So sorry,
what is
if I can quickly interrupt you, are you is the point that you're trying to make the fact that you are now a lot more future ready than what you would have been because you've kind of been thrown into the deep sea and you've learned how to swim well the hard way, and you feel that now you, the teachers, the parents, everybody is a lot more kind of willing to change and acceptable to change now than what you would have been, and that you see as one big differentiator.
absolutely. So that's exactly my point. We have experimented on ourselves in such a way that we were not given a chance to be the subjects, but we just became the subjects, right? And while that experiment happened on us, we succeeded that experiment. So we are much ready. We have upgraded our knowledge, whether it is the teachers. I'm sure the teachers were pushed into the system of upgrading their skills with technology being, some for some schools which were just the upcoming schools or the schools we were still based on the teaching learning process, which was only around the experiential system in the classroom. Lots of us would really put technology away, right? But thankfully, because of technology, we are able to sit across a virtual screen and have a discussion and deliberate on the future readiness. So could we even do that if we weren't prepared? So I would say that there is much more readiness if you see the positive side. So on the hindsight of the whole thing, I think the world the nature kind of decided that the world is going too fast. So we need to slow down, just pace down a bit and try to have a better preparation for things, and also probably forced upon learning and upgrading our own skills. And I would include everybody in this. I would say whether it's all stakeholders, be it parents, teachers, students, the admin, the staff, the entire world has figured out how to really work through this system, and much so for the education system, we are much, much ready. I would see this in the most positive light.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. And I think one key message that comes out is, that we are now a lot more change ready than what we would have ever been in the past. So no matter what, nature throws at us now, hopefully we will be in a situation to cope with it. And we've kind of, already started with that change towards the future.
Absolutely.
Mrs. Malhotra, if I could now come to you, we've kind of spoken about this with parents, with educators, for the last few months. And we know for a fact that schools will not be the same now. There will be a change. In your opinion, can you help our parents understand what are the kind of changes that you foresee once, post-COVID or post-pandemic, once schools open up? And if you could specifically kind of keep your answer focused around the curriculum changes.
See, maybe 5 months back, we never thought we're going to be where we are now, right? The change has been enormous. Earlier, there was a lot of resistance, but yes, now we see a lot of openness about it. When we see that, and when we see how the children are progressing, right? Through the online classes, we find them to be very progressive. We are finding them to be very, very flexible with changes. We find they are multitasking now. They're doing a lot of other things than their academics.
Right.
With this kind of change, I definitely see some change coming into the curriculum too, which will be, I think, more skill-based, wherein the child would be very open to collaboration, creativity, and they would be, again, as I said, they would be multitasking. So as far as curriculum is concerned, a physical teacher would also have to change herself, right? There'll be a lot of changes required there too. So what I see in the coming times is the teachers changing their methodologies, if you could call them, the way they put their courses across. Because in a physical class, it was just a face-to-face, a physical contact where the
Right.
teacher and the student were interacting. But when I observe the classes nowadays, also when I enter the rooms, it is amazing because I see a lot more happening than a normal class. So
Absolutely.
this is what I see, what I
Right.
foresee in the coming
And
times.
I think you made a very important point there regarding the skill change, and I am in the process of discussing that as well. That is it really possible to teach these skills online? What are the challenges? But that's a conversation for another day. While yes, what you've said is valid. That I think there are new skills that both our teachers and children will be forced to develop, and they can't do without them. But particularly in terms of curriculum, so things like digital literacy, I'm sure schools covered that earlier as well, or
Yeah.
introducing robotics, I'm sure schools did that earlier as well. But do you see a need for the extent of how that is done changing now with the education being a lot more online? Do you need kids to be a lot more savvy? Is there any change that you see coming from CBSE? Could you comment on that?
Yes, yes, definitely, definitely. See, again, CBSE is bringing in changes. I think by the end of August, we would have a lot more clarification as to how we have to go ahead with the assessments, with the curriculum, how the practicals are going to happen. So these are all now coming into our minds as we come near to the end of the session. Like we are almost halfway through, and our children have not even seen the labs this year. So these were a few things that were deliberated. I had attended a seminar with Mr. Joseph, Emmanuel Joseph. He was addressing. That is what he was saying. The children have not even seen the labs. Now, again, with the coming times, we really do not know what's going to happen after 2 months or even after 3 months. So again, CBSE is coming out with guidelines by the end of August, wherein they'll be very clearly telling us as to how the assessments have to go. They could be blended assessments too.
Right. Great. So
Physical
what I hear you
as
say is that change is definitely happening. The quantum of the
absolutely.
change and what exactly that change will be is still under deliberation. And as and when things are firmed up, that is something that is
Yes,
going to be communicated to parents. If I
yes,
may come
yes.
to you, Dr. Bora, um, a kind of an extension to what I was asking Mrs. Malhotra. So yes, there is going to be change, and we spoke about the curriculum change. In your schools, do you also see infrastructure change coming about, both human infrastructure and physical infrastructure? If yes, tell us specifically what is it that you guys are internally talking about?
See, there is a school is essentially for students. So anything that will change will impact children, and whatever the requirements are, whether it is the curriculum, whether it is staffing or infrastructure, whatever it is, all that is secondary. All that is a byproduct of teaching and learning. And the person most central is the teacher, obviously. So the one change that everybody has seen, and I mean, I somewhere disagree when everybody says that we were just pushed into this, and we didn't know. Well, I mean, we started our trainings in January. Uh, in other parts of the world where we have our schools, all this
Right.
situation started much earlier. And it
Right.
was only, we were just probably maybe hoping against hope that nothing will happen in India and we'll be all good. Well, it had to sooner or later. So here we are. And thankfully, because we started revamping, reskilling everyone back in January, I think by March, when the situation came to what it is, we were already ready, all set, and certainly curriculum has to change. Certainly, the method of delivery has to change. Certainly, assessment has to change. CBSE, you asked that question a while ago, has already changed a lot. CBSE has already moved the focus to competency-based education, and
Right.
Well, it has actually been talking about it since long. The national policy was being discussed a lot last full year. The draft was there, and maybe if COVID wasn't there, maybe a lot would have already begun. Some of that is delayed because now all that planning is being integrated as well. But in our systems, we had already built it in because it was already in progress and the discussions were happening. So skill based curriculum, thinking and learning in terms of skills is already there. As far as integrating ICT and stuff, as you said, digital literacy is something that schools have been incorporating since forever. um, can we think of a world without ICT now? No. It's no longer one subject. It is a way of transaction. It is just like reading and writing. It's a foundational literacy, right? So it has become a way of interacting. It is already inbuilt into the system. What children are now learning is also AI, also robotics, also a lot of other stuff, coding and so on, which is well integrated, incorporated into the school curriculum now. And learning on the digital mode is native to our children. Teaching is a very futuristic kind of profession. We are always dealing with children, a generation which is always smarter than the previous one. So we are trying
Yes.
to teach people who are smarter than us. So they are digital natives. For them, technology is their thing. It is teachers, it is we adults, uh, leaders, people in the school, parents, everybody. We have to learn. We have been the ones resisting this change since a while now. And well, the future got sort of rammed in on us, and we had to. And so we sort of accepted it, and there is still resistance. There is still a lot of push and pull, and you keep hearing of different
Will always
states
be
coming
there,
up with
right?
different policies and all that discussion debate on screen time. Sometimes I wonder, what is the child doing when you're not teaching? What under this lockdown, when the child, poor thing, can't go out and play? What's very important is also, which probably is being less talked about, is the sheer vacuum created on emotional literacy. What children are really missing when that physical connection is not there, which, well, safety, and we can't do it, we all know it, but
Right.
that's so needed. So there is a lot of positive to digital learning, remote
Mhm.
learning as we call it, but it needs to be planned completely differently. You
Right.
cannot graft the same old classroom to a digital platform. It has its own tools, it has its own taxonomy, so to say, it
Right.
everything, and it
Right.
has to be adapted accordingly. And when you do that, oh, it's wonderful. So
Lovely.
that
So
is
I think
important.
you've kind of also been in a lucky space where you've had sort of a warning coming your way because you've got schools, globally. So you've seen that there has been this change, and you had best practices to kind of go back to and implement those in your schools in India, which is fabulous. So yes, I hear you say similar stuff like what everybody has said. Yes, there is going to be a huge change. There is going to be change in infrastructure, but you kind of focused on more the emotional and the child aspect because that will drive the infrastructural changes, and that absolutely makes sense. Which also brings me to my next question, and if I could start with you, Mrs. Java. Um, while this change is going through, I'm sure there's a vision of what schools will look like once COVID is over, once the pandemic is over. What is that one worry, or what is that one thing that you will miss about schools today, which you're not happy with kind of losing out on?
You're talking about the present scenario teaching? Is that
The
what you're
present,
saying that
so
one
the
would
present
miss?
scenario, as in the physical schools that children attended pre-COVID, so about 6-7 months ago, vis-a-vis what we will see post-COVID. Do you see that there's going to be a change that you will have to make, which you're not going to be happy with, or is it all happy?
Um, I don't think that it's going to be a very difficult situation to handle. Like I said, and what Dr. Vora really pointed out very, very specifically, I was also coming to that. What we have really missed out on is this emotional connect. And I personally feel that that's going to be the most important aspect to touch upon when it comes to students, rather than the scores and the grades and the curriculum, because we all know that we are going to slash down a part of the curriculum, shift to an alternative curriculum, and bring lots of activity-based teaching there. However, having said that, for us to come back, I think what is going to be difficult for students per se would be to create that bond once again on a physical structure. Because what happens is that, okay, let me just quote one example. So I walk into the school and I have my mask on, and I keep that mask on for as many times I go to the school or I visit places or I walk out of the house. So one fine day, I just remove the mask, and suddenly I look the most unique person in the entire crowd of people there, because people refuse to kind of accept me without that mask. So and then it will definitely take a little while for us to kind of settle down to seeing each other without one, the way it took us that kind of a time to seeing each other with one. So I
Right.
personally feel that what is going to be the difficult part for us to cope up would be to again bring back that emotional connect with students, which we all are trying as education systems and all schools across. I would say that for everybody, we all are, as teachers, as institutes, are trying to reach out to our students on an emotional and an individual connect. So you're creating programs where you're doing one-on-one with kids, but how
Sure.
much can you achieve? Can you achieve with the masters? Not really.
Right.
Not through this kind of a platform. What you can do,
Right.
what I feel is going to be difficult post COVID, is going to be the time to connect back with the students and for them to feel accountable for that emotional connect, because when students perform, they perform for the sake of teachers, and they perform
Perfect.
because they
So
want to
thank you so
ensure.
much. I'm going to cut you short there. I think what you've said is extremely important, and I love the example that you've given. That you're kind of hiding behind a mask, so people don't really see you as the person you are, because you kind of hide a little bit of that facial emotion or that expression, and that obviously is a hindrance, because that aids us in that connect. So thank you for explaining that extremely simply. Now, Mrs. Malhotra, if I were to come to you and very, very quickly, if you could specifically talk about one fear other than the one that Mrs. Java has mentioned.
Um, it's the connect. Even I mean, that is one thing that we are going to be missing once we actually open the schools. Because
Okay.
see, now also when we are conducting classes, if the children see the face of the teacher, there is more connect. But if we were to hide behind the mask, as Ritu just said, that's going to be bad. Otherwise, I don't think so. Maybe there could be a change in the physical activities, the playground activities that we have. There could be a little change there. Right now, we
Right.
have so many children there together. So these will be little things, that will definitely make a difference, and not a good one.
Right. Great. Thank you so much. So again, I hear emotional connect and a little bit of social distancing, which will have a hindrance or which will have a hand to play in the social connect as well.
Yes.
Very, very briefly, Mrs. Vora, if I could also get your comments.
Same question. Well, see, I'm more worried about the children in early childhood. For them right
Okay.
now, when classes are happening, they are connecting, and they are watching a teacher on the video only. They are
Right.
watching a teacher interacting through technology only. For them, it will be their first time, and it will be much later than usual when they physically go into a school. And we will have all these, safety aspects wherein we will tell a little 4-year-old, 5-year-old, don't touch this, don't touch that, stay this much distance away. Just imagine this world from the perspective of a little baby for whom there is already separation anxiety and everything else that is always there. Uh, Add to that all the social distancing and all the things around it that the school will have. Even the sporting arena will change majorly, because games is a major aspect of schools. And we will, all the team games, which are so important, uh, who cares about physical distance in games right now? I find it tough to tell children to even play football when they really argue, we want to, please let us. And you're worrying about, okay, the ball is going to be moving around between so many children. What do you do? No, we can't. So thinking of sports that they'll be able to engage in is by itself a task. And then, of course, there'll have to be blended learning. So 50% at one time in the school and 50% maybe. So different kinds of staggered approaches, coming and going. There's too much anxiety, too much pressure.
Right.
A child is not meant to deal with all that.
Right.
It's better to do it remotely.
Yeah, and I think I 100% agree with you. I think all of us who are slightly, older, we understand the need of the hour. The little ones possibly don't, and they don't know why they're being asked to not touch, to stay away, to make sure that their mouths are covered. It's a world that is not something which is natural to them. And I understand the fear of, educators when it comes to the little one, and that's a very, very valid point put out there. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. It's been a very, very quick 30 minutes. Thank you so much. But before we all go away, I would love to capture your last thoughts very, very briefly. I want to understand that, are our kids today actually attending schools of the future, or do you see things changing a great deal from here? Mrs. Chauba, if I could get your comments.
Well, Pooja, yes, there is, like Dr. Vora also very clearly pointed out, things in future are going to be different. They're not definitely going to be the way we expected it to continue, and we thought we'll fight COVID and we'll come back, all happy back to school. It's going to
Right.
be a lot more anxiety for the institutes that run the school, much so than for anyone else, because obviously it's a bigger challenge, because we want to ensure children's safety. We also
Absolutely.
want to be naturally warm and affectionate towards them. Despite all the restrictions, we can't even express our warmth in the way we would like to express, because we are all Indians. So for us to express our affection is through hugs, through laughter, through handing, holding hands and talking to a child. So that's definitely going to be a big challenge. We are ready for other kind of challenges. I mean, digital learning, e-resources, etc., etc. I don't think that's really much of a challenge for the people around, for all the people. I would say that on behalf of all of us who are a part of the education fraternity. But yes, the bigger challenge is going to be, and there is going to be a change definitely in the future of the future schools, that we will be more guarded, we will be overtly anxious, but I think we will come around. It's going to take a little while, but we will come around. I would just want to close it by a proverb which I read, which says that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is now. So it's not too late. So,
Lovely. Well, those beautiful words. Thank you so much for that. Mrs. Vora, if
thank
I
you.
could come to you quickly, very, very quickly for your closing comments.
So I think, yes, we are already in schools of the future. Children are self-disciplined. Children are very, very self-directed. They are put into this situation. They are self-evaluating. They are working collaboratively on a technology mode. This is what the future was supposed to look like anyway. And it's only going to improve from here. It's only going to get better and better. Whatever aspects we are probably currently not being able to integrate, when we are physically there, and that's possible, we will integrate that too. And I'm sure it's going to look even better. The thing that needs to change, the world has realized, is from roti, kapda or makan. We are already into roti, kapda, makan and internet. That's become a birthright kind of a thing. It's important and
Absolutely.
essential, should be there. Digital
All right.
spread needs to be there.
Thank you. That's very aptly summed up. Roti, kapda, makan, and internet. On that note, Mrs. Malhotra, if I could also get your closing comments, and specifically talk about your schools, and how ready do you think your schools are to kind of jump into the future?
We definitely are much ready. I mean, maybe what we would have been maybe 10 or 12 years from now, we are into that right now. And from here, there should be no stopping, definitely. Even when we start with the physical schools, I see a lot of technology being used in the classes. And I think this generation is going to have an edge, because they are already trained and ready to face what is yet to come. I would like to close with a quote by Leon C. McGeehan. He says, "It's not the strongest or the most intelligent who will survive, but those who can best manage change, unquote.
Absolutely. That is beautifully put, because one thing that is going to stay constant is change. Thank you so much. It has been absolutely lovely talking to all of you. Thank you, Mr. Java. Thank you, Dr. Vora. Thank you, Mrs. Malhotra. I think, to sum this up, what I do here when we talk to a lot of educators is that, yes, words like globalization, words like democracy when it comes to education is now being spoken about. We have heard a lot of people also say things like boundaries of age, geographical boundaries, national boundaries will stop to exist. They will cease to exist when it comes to education. So we're looking at a world where a child will be told that, this is what you need to do at the end of the course. Whether you do it in 5 years or you do it in 7 years is up to you, and it's up to your capability. That is essentially where we are heading. But what lies ahead, how quickly do we reach to that future, is something that we don't know yet. We're still in that change phase. But the one thing that is certain is that that drift has started. On that note, for all the parents who are watching this video, there are 3 things that are inevitable. First is the change in curriculum, as we've spoken about today. The second is the change in technology, the pedagogy, and the way curriculum is going to be delivered. And lastly is the change in the emotional quotient that the child has today vis-a-vis what the child will have in the future. Your role as a parent, and as a co-educator, would be to kind of support the child through that emotional change. And it would be really, really helpful if that entire mindset of trying to find faults and trying to block yourselves by saying things are not right, you kind of change that to say it is our children, we're in it together with the educators, and try and find a way to be able to move forward. We've kind of come a long way from where we started off in terms of the pandemic, and I think we're at a very, very lucky space, because we are the niche 15-20% schools that are still continuing with education. Most of the government schools, there is a absolute full stop when it comes to learning for the children. So let's just make the most of it. On that note, a big thank you to all 3 of you once again. Be safe, be informed, and be school wiser. Adios until we meet again. Thank you.